Dread disease, it's a killer of a disease.
It moves rapidly and it kills rapidly.
It will sneak up and catch you when you least expect it.
It can kill you. It does kill you.
You never know who could have this disease. He could be sitting right next to you.
You know it's contagious in a certain way and that it's fatal if you get it.
There's a lot of walking time bombs out here that has it.
Do I think it's like the plague? I think it's worse than the plague.
I didn't think it could happen in Arkansas.
Not worth it for that one night or whatever.
You know, at least give the other person a chance to protect themselves.
And God's actually showing us that if we're going to behave in this way, that there's going to be some punishment or reward for it.
It's not transmitted by God. It's transmitted by sex, mommy to a baby, and by blood.
It will be better to be the first to be cured than the last to die.
Yeah, I heard a lot about AIDS lately. As a matter of fact, I've had a friend of mine tell me a joke just the other day. How do you give CPR to an AIDS patient? Who would have ever thought it could have happened to me?
During the early 1990s, fears of HIV were peaking, confusion was rampant, and infection rates kept climbing. Early reports of the so-called gay virus to President Ronald Reagan were met with denial and a sluggish response. Gay bashing accelerated over anger with AIDS, and some Americans claimed HIV/AIDS was God's way of punishing gays. On April 23, 1984, the Department of Health and Human Services held a press conference announcing the discovery of the HIV virus as the cause of AIDS. They also announced a blood-based screening test. AIDS victims began demonstrating in order to advocate getting research funded. Victims felt that researchers were working too slowly and too cautiously. There was also a feeling of having nothing to lose. Rock Hudson, a celebrity who died of AIDS, changed the game and scared the public. Since he was in the public eye, it made more people recognize the disease. He was ashamed of his past sexual activity and wanted to hide his HIV positivity. Up until he died, his publicist claimed that his sickness was inoperable liver cancer. After he died, it came out that his cause of death was AIDS, and that scared people.
Rock Hudson's wife, Elizabeth Taylor, went on to become an AIDS advocate.
If Mr. Hudson's illness had not become so publicized, would you have come forth?
I've been involved in this project for 4 months.
What about your colleagues? Do you think it took him being noticed?
Many of my colleagues have also been involved for months.
But not to this extent.
Well, I can only speak for myself. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, Mr. Hudson's illness has brought it into focus for a lot of people all over the world.
Magic Johnson first learned he was HIV positive from a blood test he had taken for insurance purposes.
Magic Johnson was a professional basketball player in the 80s, and he contracted the HIV virus in 1991. When he came forward with his diagnosis, many people realized that HIV was not something that was only caught by gay people and drug users.
First of all, let me say good after late afternoon. Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers.
Magic Johnson's disclosure that he was HIV positive increased awareness because he was such a huge celebrity. It made the disease seem much more like an imminent threat. Ryan White was a teen HIV advocate who got HIV from the blood bank. Americans pitied him as someone who got the disease not from drug use or unsafe sex, but as a result of a medical condition he was born with, hemophilia. He tried to go to public school and was not allowed to attend classes. Americans pitied him but still feared infection. Instead, the school had him use a telephone on speakerphone to communicate, which he found frustrating.
I'm going to talk to you this morning. I hope you understood me all right. If not, we'll keep working on it each day.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Tomorrow.
Ryan eventually won a court case allowing him to go to school. When he went to school, he was bullied by fearful students and parents.
That my daughter will not get AIDS by helping him. If you can't, then he shouldn't be in school.
If people with chickenpox and measles can't come, why should he?
At an event for AMFAR, the Foundation for AIDS Research, which was founded in 1983, Reagan wrote a speech about testing persons with AIDS and restricting immigration to the U.S. for HIV-positive individuals. He was booed during his speech. Reagan advocated for abstinence as a way to prevent HIV.
As individuals, we have a moral obligation not to endanger others.
And that can mean endangering others with a gun, with a car, or with a virus. I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry. They are presently denied entry for
1987, ACT UP formed as a militant AIDS advocacy group. They were excellent at marketing and gathering new knowledge to get scientists to work faster. The group changed the way drugs were researched and tested. AZT was approved by the FDA in 1987 and was the most expensive drug ever at the time, at $8 a pill and around $10,000 a year of treatments. AZT was not a new drug, but it was discovered that it stopped HIV from reproducing when scientists screened existing drugs.
Before Ryan passed away in 1990, he was a brave advocate for AIDS, and his activism inspired the Ryan White Act, which allocated $4 billion over 4 years for AIDS patients. Here's an example of a video that he participated in to advocate for AIDS rights.
You can't get it from kissing.
You can't get it from drinking out of a water fountain after somebody else with AIDS is drunken out of that same water fountain.
You can't get it from drinking out of the Coke bottle that the kids just used.
You can't get it from hugging them or like holding their hand or talking to them or sitting in their car.
You can't get it from them sneezing around you.
Heck no. Or coughing.
Or coughing. You can even dip your french fries in the same barbecue
ketchup.
sauce and it
Ketchup.
won't. Barbecue.
Ketchup's better. You can't get it from reading the same books. You can't get it from licking the same stamp.
You can't.
If you're into that.
You can only get it from intravenous drug use and sex with somebody that has the AIDS virus.
Without, using...
Without protection.
It's the right thing. Okay.
Well, how did you do number 4?
We're no different than anybody else, and we just want to be treated like everybody else.
We had a lot of education, so that helped with the knowledge, so people weren't afraid of it anymore. But I think this is also a case where peer pressure helped tremendously. I mean, you usually think of peer pressure being bad, but I think in this case, it was 100% positive. I mean, I'd be sitting in my classes and people would be talking about Ryan, and pretty soon it'd be a whole entire class discussion, and they'd be saying, well, really, what is AIDS? How can we contact it? And the people that knew, they'd sit down and they'd talk. I mean, just no questions were stupid, and nobody says, oh, you don't know about that. I mean, you're silly for not knowing. It's more of, well, here's what I know. I'll share it with you.
The people around here, I mean, didn't really know much about AIDS because it didn't really affect us. And then when it finally did affect us, and the health officials came in and taught the kids, and the kids went back and told their parents what they learned and had brochures and things like that. And I think it really helped spread to the community, just teaching through the students, because Ryan did come to the high school.
It's nothing to be afraid of, but, I mean, it is there. You have to be aware of it.
Here for a long time, and we have to get, used to, dealing with it now.
In 1994, Everett Koop sent out a pamphlet to all 114 million U.S. homes explaining what we know about AIDS. Koop advocated for education rather than mandatory testing to reduce HIV infection rates. Although he personally opposed to homosexuality and was pro-life, he released the pamphlet because Americans, especially young people, must not die because they are deprived of explicit information about how HIV was transmitted. As a result of this fear, the HIV-positive individuals were stigmatized. In 1994, Sydney Abbott received care at Bragdon's dental office. Prior to receiving care, Abbott disclosed on a form that she was HIV positive, but her HIV was asymptomatic. Bragdon gave Abbott a dental exam and discovered a cavity. Bragdon informed Abbott of his own written policy. He would treat HIV-positive students in a clinical setting at the local hospital and would require Abbott to pay for the additional expense of the facilities. A $165 difference. It was $35 originally and $200 with the extra expense. Bragdon asserted that the use of high-powered drills used for filling cavities and water used for surface cooling could increase his risk of receiving airborne particles infected with HIV. She remembers thinking at the time,
and all I could think was, I'm being penalized for being honest about my status.
whereas other individuals not diagnosed could get care at any dentist even though they carried the virus. Abbott, who was straight, along with the openly gay Bennett Klein of GLAAD, an LGBT advocacy and defense organization, sued Bragdon for discrimination under the Americans with Disability Act, an act that some say was written with the intent of protecting HIV-positive individuals. The way the ADA was written allows for 3 definitions of disability. A physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of the major life activities of such individual. B, a record of such impairment. And C, being regarded as having such an impairment. Parts B and C of this definition require the impairment be recognized by Part A. Symptomatic HIV and AIDS were already covered under the ADA because they showed visible symptoms of the disease, and it was obvious how the disease impaired their life. Abbott's case relied on trying to define reproduction as a major life activity because her HIV showed no symptoms. Specifically, Klein argued that HIV-positive individuals risk transmitting HIV to their partners and to their children. Prior to this case, disability was most commonly defined as something apparent and seen. Sydney remembers her mother comparing her and her father. Her father was disabled under the ADA because he had one arm ripped off in a work accident, while she manifested no physical symptoms of her condition. In December of 1995, Abbott won her court case against Bragdon in the trial court. Bragdon appealed the ruling, and in 1997, the First Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the lower court's ruling. Finally, in June 1998, the Supreme Court ruled that asymptomatic HIV was protected under the ADA. The Supreme Court did not rule whether HIV-positive patients are required to have the same treatment as unaffected patients. The ADA does allow caretakers to refuse care or require different procedures based on disability, if the infection poses a direct threat to the health and safety of others. The court case granted some criticism. Paula Martinac, an LGBTQ advocate who disliked that the ruling made the sexist assumption that all women aspire to motherhood and that HIV-positive women aren't mommy material. Martinac said that programs like HIV Pregnancy Clinic at San Francisco General Hospital help women to reduce the risk of HIV transmission using certain techniques and drugs like the AZD during pregnancy. Overall, though, the case was celebrated by many LGBTQ groups.
It used to seem like heresy to say that you could potentially even eliminate the virus. And now I think we can say that is a possibility.
When the ADA was first written, major life activities were not defined, and there was no examples given as what a major life activity was. In 2008, Congress amended the ADA to make it easier for HIV-positive individuals to be considered disabled. Under the new law, asymptomatic HIV-positive people can show that unmedicated HIV impairs their immune system, similar to how someone with a prosthetic leg would be considered disabled. American employers and other public accommodations to accept HIV/AIDS individuals.
If customers tell you they have a disability, don't question that statement. Instead, do your best to assist them. Each day, customers with disabilities enter our stores to shop.
And treat them as you yourself would like to be treated. Thank you so very much.
Through education, the stigma regarding AIDS has been greatly reduced, leading to greater rates of testing and lower rates of infection. Bragdon v. Abbott also gave the possibility that infertile people could be covered under the ADA, since the court ruled that reproduction was a major life activity. This led to more states mandating infertility insurance coverage, including Arkansas, California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Rhode Island, Texas, and West Virginia. Cover or offer coverage for infertility diagnosis and treatment. Although rates of HIV have fallen and life expectancy has risen, the disease remains prevalent in certain communities, especially MSM and Black communities.
I don't want a girl who gets a car for her sweet 16 or spends a stack of dollar bills on a limousine. I want a girl who takes a bus and who wears baggy jeans, rocking Nike Airs. What the hell are low teens? Don't want no fake tan, short skirt. Daddy's money don't work. Shop until you drop on the town. I want a smart girl, stronger than her father. Someone who will laugh at trying to fit in the crowd. And all we used to dream about is getting rich and getting out. Move to the nicer part of town. on a house. It took a while to figure out what type of girl that I'm about. Who brings the real man out of me? I don't really want no trust fund, baby. I like my baby.